Good afternoon and welcome to Perspective. I'm Monique Caradine. My guest today is quickly becoming one of Chicago's most notable media personalities. He hosts a very popular TV show and is known for his desire to uplift and empower his community. But in October of 2009, his faith was put to the test following the tragic murders of his elderly parents, Ruby and Milton McClendon. Two men have been charged with those murders. I'm very pleased and honored to have Garrard McClendon here with me to talk about the power of forgiveness, overcoming such a tremendous loss, and his vision for making an impact on Chicago media. Garrard.
Hey, Monique.
Hey.
It's good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yes.
You and I know each other from a couple years back. And one thing that I just really like about you is your ability to always be so positive.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that that was tough. Facing this tragedy that you and your family had to face. I want you to take me back to the day that it happened, when you found out that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Take me back to that day.
It was a day I was at the studio, WGN, and it was kind of a surreal day, Monique, because the newsroom was real quiet, and I got a phone call from my wife, and she was just this side of frantic, and she said, "Come home now. Leave the studio, come home now." And I'm like, well, what's going on? She knows I'm a workaholic. And so she said, "Give the phone to your producer." So I gave the phone to my producer, and she talked with my producer for a minute, hangs up the phone. My producer is almost in tears. I'm asking him, what's going on? So he takes me to the parking lot, and he gives me the news that my parents had been murdered, and they were the ones found in the Calumet City Forest Preserve. It was terrible. It was terrible. But I had a Damascus experience, because he tried to drive me home from the studio to my parents' house, and I said, no, I've got to drive. I have to do something. And so I followed him home and to my parents' house, and on the Dan Ryan is when it hit me that I had to forgive, because the things that were going through my mind, Monique, were your parents' home will be a crime scene. You'll see yellow tape, FBI. You'll see county sheriff's police there. And it was agonizing to drive home. But right around 31st Street and the Dan Ryan is when it hit me. Garrard, you don't know who the perpetrators are, but just let it go and forgive, because you have to be an example for those that are weaker than you at this moment. So it was debilitating, it was tough, but the presence of God said, let it go.
And that you hadn't even gotten there yet.
25 minutes after I found out that my parents were murdered, something came over me and said, let it go, forgive. Because if you don't forgive, it's going to consume you. And if you don't forgive, when you get to the crime scene, you'll fall apart.
But did you resist that? Did you say, because you have a right to be angry. You have a right to feel pain.
I was angry at the moment. I'm still angry. But the power of forgiveness trumps that anger. It's still there, but forgiveness is bigger than anything else. And so it's my job to love and not to hate.
People criticize you for that. I was reading some of the articles that were written, and these days people can respond to those articles, and people were saying, how can he forgive? This was awful. His parents didn't deserve that.
Right. And they didn't. Beautiful, loving people, community-based, but it's the kind of thing that I don't even understand, Monique. Yes. I don't understand why I'm forgiving. It's bigger than me.
What did you do when you found out that the suspects in the case were teenagers?
It was disheartening, because you expect 30, 35-year-olds with a criminal record, felony, but that made it twice as disheartening when I found out that the suspects were so young. It's terrible.
Have you attended any of the hearings
for
the suspects?
Yes, we've gone to omnibus hearings as well as the hearings for evidence.
Right. And have you talked or communicated at all with the parents of the teenagers involved?
No.
Allegedly?
No, I have not. I've been instructed not to, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm being silent. I'm just speaking with members of my family.
But you see them there at the hearing?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Have they extended any condolences officially to you?
Yes, they have. They've extended condolences, and we accept the condolences because that's my modus operandi, is to forgive. I got to let that stuff go. I'm trying to transcend the moment, Monique.
You were back to work about a week after the funeral. Was that too soon for you? Why did you have to go back so quickly?
If I would have waited 2 or 3 weeks, that would have eaten me up. You know, I said, let me get back here and do what I need to do for the Chicagoland community.
Right. Okay. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get Garrard's take on Chicago's gun restrictions and a lot more. Stay with us. I'm continuing my conversation with CLTV talk show host Garrard McClendon, and we've been talking about the murder of his parents back in October of 2009, and 2 teenagers were charged in those murders, Gregory Brooks and Rio Thompson. Gregory 18, Rio 17. They have pled not guilty. What's your reaction to that? What is your just your gut feeling? I know you have some thoughts on that, even though I know you don't want to say too much about the case.
When it comes to the legal system, that is something that is customary for a suspect and his or her counsel to plead not guilty. So that was something that we were expecting. It didn't really jolt us because, you know, you're not guilty until you're proven so.
And trial is set to start when?
We're looking at November for both trials.
And you've been back and forth to court constantly, right?
Yes, my family and I, we've been in court constantly since January.
Right. Okay, so Garrard, typically on your show, you've been known to talk about violence, you know, the community getting better. How does what happened to you and your family, to your parents, how did that change your perspective on that?
It changed my perspective in that it has made me even more passionate and more compassionate for
compassionate?
Yes, for the people that we discuss on my show every day. It's one thing to see on the news that someone has been slain. It's another thing when that someone is someone in your family. And so now on my show, I try to give callers a longer period of time to speak. After the show, we take voicemails and text messages. I try to answer those calls and those text messages and speak with people and try to console them. So it's made me much more compassionate.
But you've been called an apologist, you know, for black crime. You've been called all kind, you know, a liberal, extreme liberal, and all kinds of things I've read about you. Is there room for you now to be tougher? I mean, now that you know the circumstances of the deaths of your parents, are you something? I mean, has anything hardened? Inside of you?
No. And my
tougher on criminals, you know. Look, you think about the gun ban. Do you think that people should be able to have guns?
There's a judicial system. You know, there's a legislative system. There's an executive branch, and there's the branch of utmost sovereignty, which is God's court. And so there are some things that I can't manipulate. It's my job to love. I'm just as tough as the next person. But it depends on how the person defines what tough means. You know, Jesus loved in a tough way. And sometimes you gotta let things go to show your resilience. You know, for me to be on the news when all that happened, in tears crying, my 2 other brothers in tears crying, if that would have been constant, I couldn't have gotten my message out.
So you and your brothers and your entire family, did you kind of like agree to have a united front on this, that we're not going to get on camera, we're not going to cry, we're not going to lose it, we're just going to remain calm?
Absolutely.
You did?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the resolve. And when one brother couldn't take it, you put that brother away from the cameras, let the other brother who's stronger at the moment go out in front of the cameras. That's how, and thank the Lord that I've got 2 older brothers, Dwayne and Theodore, who were extremely supportive in that particular situation.
But at the end of the day, have you all had those moments where you all go together in a room behind closed doors?
Oh yeah. It's still unbelievable to me. I drank tea with my parents 2-3 times a week. I'd drop in before going to the studio.
They call into your show?
Oh, unbelievable. And that was the weekend of my parents' anniversary. They were married 54 years. Visited with them for their anniversary. We took their gifts to them. That was my mom's birthday weekend, my brother's birthday weekend, you know, and then that's Sunday and Monday. That's when we got the news.
What was the last thing you said to them?
Oh man, my mother called me 2 nights before it happened, and she asked me, did I see the movie Where the Wild Things Are? Because as a child, she would read that book to me by Maurice Sendak. And that film was out at that time. And I said, Ma, I haven't seen it yet, you know, but I plan to go see it. You know, we did a little other small talk, chitter chatter, spoke with her at 8:30 Sunday night. That was the last time I spoke with my mother.
How is your parents' legacy going to be carried on?
We're going to carry Milton and Ruby McClendon's legacy on through the Milton and Ruby McClendon Educational Scholarship Fund. It's going to be taking place through the Legacy Foundation, and we're going to be offering scholarships. We're also going to offer buses that allow people to come on board and to fill out college applications early. And we're also going to be giving money to teachers so that they don't have to spend their own money at the beginning of the school year. So that's how we're going to use the funds. We also got a matching fund from a very, very large athletic shoe company as well. So it's been a blessing.
Okay, good. Lots more to talk about. I haven't even talked about gun restrictions yet, so we'll get to that in these final segments. Garrard McClendon is with me on Perspective. Stay with us. We'll have more in just a moment. I'm having a one-on-one conversation here today with Garrard McClendon about his life challenges in the past year, and I also want to talk to you, Garrard, about the gun restrictions here in Chicago. You know about the news, I'm sure you covered it on your show, about Chicago's gun ban being overturned. What are your thoughts on that, really? Do people need to have guns to be able to protect themselves?
You know, I think in some situations, yes. I think Mayor Daley is off base by going against the Second Amendment. You know, yes, I do believe that assault weapons should be banned, but what's sad is that when you have people who aren't upstanding citizens, who have more artillery than the police department or the National Guard, that can pose a serious problem. You know, when you look at the Wortham situation, Officer Wortham.
Right.
You know, if no one's armed around him that day, you know, you're looking at 3 to 4 suspects who could have gotten away.
Absolutely.
Scot-free. And so I think the Second Amendment should be upheld. I'm not a gun-toting person myself, but you know.
But what are your viewers saying about it? Because you know, I listen to my viewers on radio and the feedback that I get here on Perspective, and you know, a lot of people say that if the average, you know, if the criminals believe that upstanding citizens possibly had guns, and they would think twice.
My viewers are saying the same thing.
Exactly.
They're saying that give us the Second Amendment. Why should we not be able to carry, you know, or conceal or have a handgun in our home?
Right.
It just makes sense.
Maybe some of the big cases that we've heard recently would have turned out differently. We were talking during the break about Jennifer Hudson.
That's right.
And her family.
That's right.
And Darian Albert and so many other things. You were saying something very interesting, that you believe that some of those major stories that you covered on your show, Jennifer Hudson's, Darian Albert, and some of the others, that in a way they may have prepared you.
Yes. Yes.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is when we were talking about the Hudson family 5, 6, 7 days on our show, it almost gave me a blueprint for what was going to happen to my family without me even knowing. I met Darian Albert's mother at the Regal Theater, you know, and to look in her eyes, I mean, it was like I was looking into my own eyes, and we just broke down crying, and so it was a way to prepare. And so I thank God for strong people in the Hudson and in the Albert family that were able to see that through.
What's something that you want to say to parents? You're a big advocate of parents being involved in their children's lives. So if you could say one thing right now to parents out there listening and watching, what would it be?
You know, the cliche is to get involved with your children, but not just your own children. Get involved with your entire block, your entire community. My parents, my mom was a Cub Scout den mother. You know, my dad was a Little League baseball coach and track coach, and the entire community embraced my parents. So I would say, especially men. Men are the ones that aren't stepping up. Women are doing their job, but men in the community have to step up and be men again, man enough to mentor boys into being good citizens.
I don't know, it's such a catch-22 because I go back, you know, you can rewind any crime story that plays out in this city, and when the parents of the suspects are interviewed on TV, they always say, my child couldn't have done that.
Right.
You know, and the same thing happened in the case of the teens allegedly involved in your parents' murder. You know, how do you respond to that? I mean, obviously these are parents who thought that they were doing the right thing.
Parents are going to love their children, and you cannot fault them for that. When crimes take place, though, once again, Garrard can't put anyone in jail or sentence anyone, but the judicial system will, and then even the greater court will do even more, and that is sovereignty. That's God.
Your brother said something really interesting, and that was that in many cases parents raise their daughters and they love their sons.
Right.
What's the difference? And how does that impact the behavior that we're seeing from so many African-American males out there? Because let's face it, to a degree, African-American males, there's a segment of that population that is completely out of control, Garrard. I know we like to, you know, we love our community. I love it just the same as you.
Monique, girls are raised by women, and they are given the opportunity to wash dishes, do things around the house, do chores. A lot of times when women raise boys, they spoil them. Because if the woman isn't married, they spoil the boy because he's some sort of vicarious male. So it's like, don't go out and get a job. You don't have to wash the dishes, baby. It's all right. I'll pay your rent. You can live here. And so they never put the boy that's turning into a man on the spot to go out and get a job. And so now what we have, especially in the black community, is we have scores of spoiled boys who don't know the concept of work, honest work, and that's a serious problem.
Interesting. All right, so something to think about. We'll take a pause here and get some final thoughts from our guest, Garrard McClendon. Stay with us. Welcome back to Perspective. Just a few minutes left with Garrard McClendon. We've talked about a lot, including, of course, the murders of his parents back in October of 2009. You know, I didn't plan on asking you this, but I will. What do you want to see happen in the case of the suspects allegedly responsible for their deaths? I mean, I just think about my parents, Garrard, and I get emotional if I think about anything happening to my parents.
Yeah. You know, I'd like justice to be served, whatever that might be. I'm trying not to harbor any malice in my heart. I'm trying not to think of the actual convictions or the time period that may, you know, take place. I'm just trying to continue to love, and I'm a strong supporter of the justice system carrying itself out.
Okay. Okay, and again, we'll see. Trial starts in November, right around the anniversary, the first anniversary of their death. So we'll be watching for that. Let's shift gears here and talk a little bit about your role as one of the more popular media personalities here in Chicago. Popularity is getting, everybody is talking about Garrard McClendon.
Yes.
And I think it's fantastic. What is it that you want to do? What kind of impact do you want to make here in Chicago media?
Yeah, I'm trying to make television more interactive.
Yeah.
You know, because television is one way. You have talking heads telling people at home what they want to hear, you know, or what they don't want to hear. My television show was wide open. You know, it's full throttle, it's 2.0. You know, I let people text me during the show, call me during the show. You can send me Facebook, Twitter messages, and I read them right on the show. And so I think that's where media has to go. It has to be more interactive. It can't be one way anymore. It can't be just broadcasting anymore. It has to be narrowcasted, and then the narrowcast becomes the broadcast.
Right.
And with the internet, it's changing the game.
Totally.
Internet is keeping television stations and radio stations on their toes.
Yes.
You know, and they have to reinvent, and that's what we're trying to do as well. I embrace the internet. It's there. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Because, I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of media outlets are disappearing because they have not embraced it.
Right.
Seeing the disappearance of newspapers,
right,
radio stations, you know, left and right.
Right. Everyone's trying to monetize. You know, we can't do anything until we can monetize our internet capital. Well, you know what? Just keep getting creative, and the money will take care of itself. And that's the biggest thing that I talk about all the time. Let's get creative. Let's make something happen.
How important is black media?
Black media is extremely important. I had the opportunity of meeting Hans Massaquoi, Lynn Norman, Bob Johnson, publisher of Jet, and John H. Johnson, publisher of Ebony, years ago. And I was a boy. And from that day on, I realized the power of black media. It's the voice that's untold, and we have to tell that story. You know, there are things that you're not going to see in a New York Times or a Chicago Tribune that you will see in a Chicago Defender or in an Indigo.
But black media is disappearing. So what happens if it goes away, and what does it need to do to survive?
It may have to go to the internet. I mean, you've got thegrio.com, you know, you've got the Amsterdam, you know, .com. I mean, we just have to reinvent. We have to shift the focus.
Garrard, it has been a pleasure to have you here with me.
Yes, Monique.
We'll be watching you.
Thank you.
On that other station. Garrard McClendon, thank you so much.
I appreciate you.
That's it for Perspective today. I'm Monique Caradine. We'll see you back here next week.